for people to get here. Jax West, Stephen Avery Project, MAM Gossip, and Justice with Jax. We are going live today to do part 3 of reading from my book, Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Stephen Avery, that is self-published on we're on Facebook, on Amazon. Um, and this is April 18th. Hey, Bryce. So this is currently live, 10 a.m. Chicago time. A lot of people watch these after they've been live, but they think they're live at that time, and they're not. It's recorded. And Facebook only will keep live videos. Hey, Christopher. Will only allow live videos to be up for 30 days. So at some point over the weekend, and hello, Carrie, I will upload it to the Justice with Jax YouTube channel. There is a folder there that is for the Stephen Avery case, and that's where you can find all the videos that I've done over the 10 years I have followed the case, that had been done live here and on Free Brendan and in Justice with Jax. Hello, Marie. Oh, well, thank you, Marie. That is really nice. I appreciate that. So, today is part 3. You can find the other 2 parts of when I have read my book on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to make sure that I label them too, so it will be easy to find and uh, stay in order. I work full time, so I'm not able to do it during the day and on weekdays, and so weekend is really my best bet at also doing it at this time, which I'm told is the best time for people all around the world to be able to tune in when I'm live. When I'm reading from the book, looking down, I won't necessarily see your comments or questions, but both Bryce and Christopher are on here, so they can answer questions if I don't see them, or if I do see them squirrel and get distracted, I will answer your questions. And if you ever have any questions when this is not live, you can always message this page, Stephen Avery Project. Christopher's the one that, checks out most of the messages that we get. And then he lets me know if there's something that I really should be looking at. I go in there sometimes and look. Or you can email it straight to official Stephen Avery Project God, I am so distracted this morning. Official Stephen Avery Project at gmail.com or justicewithjax at gmail.com. And before I start reading, who am I? Since that is a question I get all the time. I am just a supporter who watched the Netflix Making a Murderer and then started looking into the case. And this book is my story of what I've gone through in being involved with this case since December of 2015. Holy cow, that's a long time. And I do think once I am done reading this book, and this is where we are, if you can see that's how far we are. We're not even halfway done yet. But I think when I am done reading this, I will then start writing the sequel, because this was self-published on Amazon in 2022. And stuff has happened since then. Like when I wrote this book, Stephen was mad at me and not talking to me anymore. And now I've talked to Stephen a few times. So um, I've got more stuff to say. All right. So, a thing that I discovered the first time I was doing the story time is I never put page numbers. I can swear, though, in the document that I wrote this in, there were page numbers on it. So that has to be something with how I uploaded it to Amazon, but there's no page numbers. So we are starting at the chapter that says Stephen Avery Project. When Netflix released Making a Murderer in December of 2015, it became a huge hit. A guy in Wisconsin remembered the case and started a Facebook page, which he named Stephen Avery Project. It was the first one out there and quickly generated a big following as so many people were clamoring to know more about the case. And I don't know if I say this in the chapter that has made millions, Christopher, you're going to get me in trouble where people are going to say, "Why haven't you given that money to Stephen?" This book's made like nothing. I get literally pennies. Maybe at some point when I get a statement of when somebody buys the book, or if I should take a screenshot and show you all how little I make when somebody buys this book. But so, Stephen Avery Project. Hey, Debbie, what up? Um, I would not have named it Stephen Avery Project. You know, so many things. When you're typing online, you just use initials. Like law enforcement, when you see people post about law enforcement, it's just LE for law enforcement. And so for Stephen Avery Project, you're just going to use the initials SAP, SAP. And that's just fodder for the guilters, So, yeah, I wouldn't have named it Stephen Avery Project, but that wasn't up to me. That was Curtis who called it that. And maybe not everybody thinks of SAP being SAP and what SAP means. But so maybe it's just me, but I don't like the name. All right. The founder wrote to Stephen Avery, and Stephen wrote back to him. Later, they would go on to talk on the phone, and eventually would visit in person. The founder would make videos about the case and his visits. He would also talk to the press. The founder, when I wrote this, I was purposely not using his name. Why I keep saying the founder. The founder originally had a friendship with the various members of the Avery family. He visited the Avery salvage yard and talked with Stephen's mother, Dolores. Everything was good at first. But then he learned the hard way that the family doesn't have Stephen's best interests in mind and really only care about themselves. One of the Avery family members was quick to name themselves the family spokesperson after Making a Murderer came out. Carla is Stephen's niece and Brendan Dassey's cousin. She plays herself on social media to have thought of Stephen as a second father and claimed to be close to Brendan. But those are lies. She barely had anything to do with either one of them until Making a Murderer was released and became a huge success. Carla quickly inserted herself into any Facebook page or group that covered the case. Then she would demand to take control of it. If the person didn't give it to her, she and her minions would go on the attack and take it down. The original family Facebook page was started by a woman who was no relation to the family. Carla wormed her way in, and when she didn't get her way, she and her friends took the page down. Yes, Debbie. Hi, Carla. Stephen Avery Project was the biggest page, and Carla set her sights on it. At first, she was friendly with the founder. But once she tried to pull rank and he shot her down, she resorted to shady tactics to try to ruin him. She had a couple of minions start sending him provocative text messages. They sent him nude photos. Sadly, he took the bait and sent one back, which I actually have, by the way. I have that picture. I did not put that in the book, but I do have it. This was all she needed. They then blasted him all over social media. He was married with a young child and another on the way. This caused his wife to temporarily leave him. The founder dealt with a lot of slanderous attacks for months. He tried to ignore them and just continue advocating for Stephen Avery's innocence. Eventually, it got to be too much. He decided that in order to save his marriage, he would have to leave the Stephen Avery Project. His moderators were people I knew due to my work on the Free Rundown page. They told the founder that they thought that I would be the best person to take over Stephen Avery Project and would keep running it as he had intended, a support page for Stephen Avery. The founder knew he would not turn it over to anyone in the Avery family, as they don't even think Stephen was innocent, let alone run a quality page to support him. Carla was pushing him hard to give it to her, and there was absolutely no way he was going to let that happen. So his moderators worked out a deal between myself and the founder of Stephen Avery Project for me to take it over. When you run a big Facebook page, especially back in 2016 when this occurred, you get a lot of messages and emails from people claiming they will pay you a lot of money for your page. The founder believed he could make something off the work he had done for the last 10 months and the pain and suffering he went through. He first asked for a crazy amount of money. I said no. It was then negotiated down to a couple $100s. So myself and a couple of the moderators put together the money to give it to the founder. I just got a message from Stephen. Okay, hold on. He says, well, you got a letter coming from me soon. Okay, you can talk about that. Okay. So, okay, well, you breaking news. You've heard it here first. Steven says he sent me a letter, and when it comes, I'll go live and talk about that. Hello, Jerome. Okay, so I just said myself and a couple of the moderators put together the money to give it to the founder. The founder asked for me not to make it public the fact that he took money, as it was an attack that Carla and her minions always tried to use against him, that he was just in it for the money. I agreed. I took the page over in November of 2016, 1 month before the year anniversary of Making a Murderer. There were a little over 100,000 followers at that time. As I write this today, almost 5 years later, we have a little over 220,000 followers. The founder went on one last visit with Stephen to tell him he had to move on to save his family. He told him I was taking over the page and gave him my contact information. A couple of weeks later, I got my first phone call from Stephen. And the next chapter is called Talking to Stephen Avery. But I want to add to that, and that's what these lives are too, is that as I read stuff, there's more stuff I want to say on those things. The stuff that was done to Curtis, who founded Stephen Avery Project, was so disgusting. Back then is when Stephen got involved with this woman. I can't remember her name, and I don't ever like to say her name because this woman just wants attention, and I probably talk about her in the book. See, I haven't read the book since I wrote it, so I don't remember what's all in here, so maybe there'll be a future chapter talking about this woman. But when you are a supporter of Stephen's, I will support him. It's his life, and he can choose to date. Not Sandy. This was the woman that went on, that became his fiance and went on Dr. Phil. That woman. Ugh. So I have to have a chapter on her because she and I used to talk, and I talked to her daughter, and so, but so Steven can choose to date whoever he wants. I'm not going to tell him he can't date somebody, and that's what his family was doing. That they didn't want this woman anywhere or around Stephen. And not for Stephen's best interest. It was for them because they want to control everything Stephen. They want to make all the money they can from the supporters and get the there you go, Bryce got it. Um so that's why they didn't want Lot Lizard, as I'll call her, thanks to Bryce. Um, that's why they didn't want Lot Lizard with Steven. Now, it turns out Lot Lizard was not there for the right reasons, and she absolutely should not be around Steven. But when Steven was first talking with her, he was very enamored with her, and just leave it at that. You know, not everybody likes everybody, right? And doesn't like the people they choose to date or marry, and it's not your decision. So when Lot Lizard went to Wisconsin to go visit Stephen, somebody literally tried to run her off the road as she was driving to the prison. And she became, and maybe that's not even true because, at the time when I'm hearing this, um, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody would do that to her. But now we know she's a big old liar. But anyway, Curtis, who was a Stephen supporter, not part of the family, he then he went with Lynn to the prison. Um, and then that made the family go after Curtis even more. Um, and the things that the family said and did to Curtis, where yeah, Curtis did the wrong thing of when these people, the that he was catfished, and these fake women were sending him um, naked pictures, and then he sent them a dick pic. I have it in my phone. Um, so he took the bait. He was stupid. Um, he's a young guy. He had a toddler, I believe his child was at that time, and his wife was pregnant with another. And so Curtis made the decision that he was leaving to save his family. I don't think he's poked his toe even in remotely since he left in 2016. Um, and then it was used against me. It's got to be in the book, so I won't talk about it. That I paid Curtis, but we'll see if that's in here, and we'll talk about that then. Yeah, her on Dr. Phil. Gross. All right, so this chapter is talking to Stephen Avery. The first time Stephen called me was very surreal. This guy I had first seen in a Netflix documentary, who I had now put so much of the last year of my life looking into his case, was on the other end of the phone. I know there are so many bizarre fangirls out there who worship him and try to use him. One of the first things I told him was that I wasn't looking to date him. When I told him that, he just giggled. Um, I just wanted that out there from the get go. I believed in his innocence and that he should be free. I wasn't looking for a relationship of any kind. I told Stephen that I would gladly help him however I can. He could call me whenever he wanted. If he wanted to add me to his visitors list, I would visit, but that would be the extent of our relationship. I was amazed by how much he laughed and was in good spirits. You would think someone who was wrongfully convicted, not once, but twice, would be angry and bitter. Not Stephen. He had a good attitude and was positive he would soon be free. Stephen would call me about once a month. There were so many girls that were demanding his time. They wanted him to call at least once a week and would have a set day and time. Not me. I told him to call me whenever he wanted, or not, totally up to him. He always tried to maintain a relationship with his family, but besides his parents, he was constantly let down. Stephen would want something posted on social media, and he would ask his niece to post it, and she would refuse. He then would ask me to do it. I always posted what he requested. It's a support page for him. The people come to the page for news about him, so it should have the pictures and messages he wants on it. It was just another thing that showed how his family truly didn't give smurfs, two smurfs, about him and were just using his name for their own personal gain. Now that Stephen was talking to me, it got Carla and her minions into an even bigger tizzy against me. They even made posts saying if Stephen talked to me, then they would no longer support him. When I would talk to Stephen, he would say negative things about her, but the bottom line was that she was his family. She knew that and exploited it. I was under constant attack by her and her people. They would go through the member list of the Facebook group, the MAM gossip group, and private message each and every one in there and tell them they shouldn't be in the group, and then try to tell some lie about me. It was so pathetic. It actually continues to this day. After about a year, I stopped hearing from Stephen. Carla made some posts saying that Stephen had finally seen me for what I was, allegedly, and was no longer speaking to me. She thought that would be the end of me. She was oh so wrong. Stephen Avery project continued. My support of Stephen's innocence has nothing to do with whether I talk to him or not. I don't care if he likes me or not. How many of you out there reading this right now, or listening to me read it, have ever talked to Stephen on the phone? Does that mean you're not a supporter because you don't talk to him? Of course not. The page continued on as it always had. We shared any news about his case. I would do live videos to discuss any filings or any big developments. We kept supporting his innocence. 6 months later, I got a call from Stephen out of the blue. The first thing he said was, "Well, hi, stranger. Bet you're surprised to hear from me." And of course, he laughed. He then explained to me what had happened. As you would expect, it was some real petty drama bullsmurf. You ready for this? If you've watched Making a Murderer, you have seen Sandy. She was portrayed as his girlfriend. We later found out that she broke up with him on the Dr. Phil show, saying she can't marry someone who won't accept Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. She didn't even tell Stephen before she dumped him on TV. Early on, I was defending her from the Avery family, as they all hated her and said such horrible things about her. They would suck up to her, though, since she did visit Stephen, and they didn't want to make him upset, so they couldn't use him to fleece his supporters. I originally thought she was a benefit to Stephen, but learned then that she was no better than the Avery family. They all quite enjoy the fame and donations they get to their affiliation with him. While they are having parties with their fans, Stephen sits in a cell. Stephen told me that Sandy had him add 2 of her new fan friends to his visitors list. The 3 of them would visit him together every week, as they all live in Wisconsin. But then the 2 girls, who are considerably younger than Sandy, started going without her. Sandy was feeling used by these girls. One of them likes to portray herself on social media as basically a lawyer, when she is nothing remotely close to a lawyer. She will post a lot of smurf about Kathleen Zellner and thinks she knows oh so much more than the lawyer who has freed the most wrongfully accused people in the country. Stephen told me no one talked more smurf about me to him than the wannabe lawyer. All 3 of those girls had pushed him to stop speaking to me, so he did it. Then, after having these girls visit for 6 months and all the drama it was causing with Sandy, Sandy demanded he remove the girls from his list. So he did that too. Now that he wasn't talking to them anymore, he reached back out to me. Then he added me to his visitors list, and boy, did Sandy's head spin around then. Sandy, Wannabe, the other chick, Carla, everyone had a total meltdown that not only was he talking to me again, but he wanted me to come visit him. They made all kinds of public posts saying again that they were no longer going to have anything to do with him if he was talking to me. Sandy played buddy-buddy with the two girls and let everyone think I was the one who caused him to take those two off his list. I had nothing to do with it whatsoever. I don't care who he talks to or who visits him. It's none of my business. This revved everyone up again, and I was under attack 24/7, using the same old lies, claiming I stole t-shirt money that had been proven time and time again had been given in cash to Barb. Stephen was getting a lot of pressure from his family to cut ties with me, but Stephen is going to do what Stephen wants. Stephen sent me the visitors' papers to fill out. He also included a picture from the prison he wanted me to post to show he loves his supporters. And so I have a picture of the page that I had to fill out, and then a letter that was dated March 31st, 2019, that says, "Hello, Jax, to my supporters. I'm doing good right now, and soon I will get a new trial so I can be happy again. Love, Stephen Avery." And then it was a picture of him that he wrote on it, "Love my supporters." So that picture is here. Love my supporters. Can you see it? God, the light. See, love my supporters. All right, next page. I'm like an old person trying to do it. All right, the next chapter is called Visiting Stephen Avery. I didn't know what to expect during my first visit with Stephen Avery. By this time, I was also advocating for two other wrongfully accused and had visited both of them, so I had been in a prison, but you just don't know how each one operates until you get there. The other prisons I visited are in the middle of nowhere. Lots of farmland surrounds them. But Waupun Correctional, where Stephen was, is right in the middle of a neighborhood. There are literally houses right across the street. The prison is also pretty close to the sidewalk. There is a big, tall fence around it. You walk in one gate, and then there is another you have to wait for the guards to open. Then you walk down a sidewalk into a room where you go to the desk and you have to fill out the slip of paper and leave your ID. You can't bring anything into the visitor's room other than the quarters you need for the vending machine. So one wall in that room is made up of lockers that you have to use a quarter to rent and get a key. You wait for the guards to call your name, and then you get a quick pat down. Compared to the other prisons I have visited, I felt that they didn't do a very good job of making sure I wasn't bringing in anything, but whatever. You walk through a door and are in a little room where officers are on the other side of a glass window. There really aren't any lights on. You get some glow-in-the-dark stamp on your hand. Then they open the other door and you walk into the visitor's room. You have to go over to a kind of raised platform where an officer is sitting. You tell them who you are visiting and they tell you what table you are assigned. When you visit an inmate, they always have to sit on one side where it is easier for the officers to see them. Your back is to the officers. Sometimes the inmate will have beat you to the room and are already sitting there waiting. Other times, you could wait for a while. At Waupun, you have a little chair on either side of a tiny table that is way low like a coffee table. When Stephen comes in and gets to the table, you can hug them. Waupun's visitor's room is huge, and all the vending machines are in an attached room next to it. It's like a big gym. It was humongous. An inmate is not allowed to go by the vending machines. They have to tell you what they want, and you have to go get it. Some prisons have a rule that they have to have a paper plate, so if you're getting them a bag of chips, they have to have a plate under it. There's a wide variety of vending machines. There's refrigerated food and even frozen food. There's a microwave to heat stuff up. Wapun only takes change in the vending machines. It was totally different from the two prisons I visited in Illinois, where you get assigned a plastic card like a debit card that you have to put money on it in the lobby. You are not allowed to bring money of any kind into the Illinois prisons. I found it odd that I can carry this big heavy bag full of quarters and silver dollars, because that was a thing too when you would put, so they had the vending machine in the lobby, and so you would put the, you could put bills in there, and then the quarters would come out, but it would also be silver dollars. Okay. But yeah, so I was always amazed that I would carry this big heavy bag of quarters and silver dollars that if I hit someone with it, it would hurt. Stephen looked just as you would think he does. He's shorter than I thought he would be, shorter than me. He was in good spirits as usual. We chatted about miscellaneous things over the couple hours I was there. At Wapun, they have an inmate who sits in the visitors' room and will take pictures of the inmates and their visitors. At the one prison I visited in Illinois, there were no pictures. At the other, an employee of the prison would take pictures maybe twice a week for like a half hour. It's pretty hit or miss if you can get a picture taken. All prisons charge the inmates for the pictures. They just use a digital camera that has a Bluetooth printer right there. Stephen asked to get a picture with me, so we did. Stephen asked them to take a picture with the two of us and then one of just him so that he could send it to his mom. And then there's the picture. And actually, I can show you. That's not that picture. Where is? There it is. So here are, that's Melissa. Here are two, because they took two pictures, but they look basically the same. But you can see, when you see my legs, I'm kind of crouching down so we can be closer to the same height. See? And I was wearing a Free Melissa shirt. One of the other people I advocate for is Melissa Kaluzinski. She is another client of Kathleen Zellner. So I thought I would wear my Free Melissa shirt on my visit with Stephen. On my first visit with Melissa, I wore a Stephen shirt. And there's a picture where I'm wearing a shirt that says Injustice Avery wear. And let me find that original picture. There it is. Melissa and I on our first visit. I'm not going to get into Melissa's case yet, but there will be a chapter in this book on her, as she is very important to me, and I want everyone to know about her injustice as well. I continue talking to Stephen every month and would visit once a month. Here's the photo from the next visit, which, instead of showing it in the book, okay, it's a space background. So that was the second visit. And Stephen always liked to take a picture alone too, for me to put out a picture of just him for his supporters. I think it is fabulous that they have inmates paint a background for the photos. They change it up occasionally too. I visited Stephen one last time on Father's Day in 2019. We didn't get a photo on that visit, but something that happened during that visit I thought was very odd, and I feel it's so important for people to know. And this is something I've talked about before, but I think this is a really big deal, and this is, I think, a scoop. Okay, so there are all of these groups of tables in the room. Stephen and I were off to the one side, but I think we were like 3 rows in. At one point, a girl there for a visit walks right behind Stephen and says, "Hey, Stephen, how are you doing?" Stephen said, "Not too bad." The girl walked over to her assigned table. Stephen asked me if I knew who she was. I had no clue. Are you ready for this? It was one of Teresa Halbach's sisters. Her boyfriend was an inmate, and she was there visiting him. I was pretty blown away by this. If the Halbach family thinks Stephen killed Teresa, then why would one of her sisters purposely walk over to him and ask how he is doing? That made zero sense to me. Wouldn't she be afraid of him? Wouldn't she want to stay as far away from him as she could? Stephen told me that he sees her all the time there for visits. I'm like, what? I asked if he gets along with her boyfriend. He said they are in different parts of the prison, so he doesn't really see him or know him. This just really stuck out to me as being very bizarre and made me think there are Halbachs that don't think Stephen is guilty either. That is just something that always stands out to me, because if somebody killed one of my loved ones, I'm not going to be in a visitor's room with that person. Actually, they wouldn't allow me to be in a visitor's room with that person because I don't think I could control myself. That because I am very petty, and I don't know if you call it passive aggressive, that I would just be saying stuff that would be loud enough for that person to hear. And so if I thought that person killed my family member, I would be you're better off in here, because if you were out there, I'd fucking kill you, or what I mean. Not uh, so I certainly am not. I mean, she was like right here. She walked right behind him, and we are not on an aisle or anything. We are in the middle of all these little tables, and there was pillars too. And this girl purposely walks behind Stephen because, yeah, you have to go over on the one side where, it's raised up where an officer is sitting. And so you go over there and they tell you what table number you've been assigned to. But then that doesn't mean you have to walk behind Stephen. She could have walked, why would you walk straight through and go behind Stephen? You wouldn't be near him. And okay, if it were me, maybe I would walk right behind him, but it would be to say nasty stuff. Not to go, hey Stephen, how you doing? Very weird to me. And I state all the time in the live videos we've done over the years that I don't blame the Halbach family for originally believing Stephen is guilty, because it's law enforcement, and you've got no reason to not believe them and their evidence, right? So, and I firmly believe they thought Stephen was guilty due to what law enforcement told them and the evidence they had. I have to take off my flannel because I'm starting to sweat up here. So I feel like they thought there was a chance that Stephen was a guilty man that could go free, because I'm not in a bra, by the way. I'm in a tank top, just in case somebody starts thinking something like, "Oh my God, I'm now in a bra here." It's a tank top. Um, Sorry, distracted now. Um, but they were afraid, due to Stephen going to prison for 18 years for Penny Bernstein, that he would get away with this because of his wrongful conviction lawsuit. But so I don't blame the Halbach family at the time of the case for thinking that Stephen is guilty, but I do blame them now, because if my family member disappears, I am going to look under every rock. I am going to read everything. I'm going to look into everything. I'm going to go to every court hearing. I will go to every press conference. Yeah, Debbie. Um, the, welcome to my OnlyFans. um, so Making a Murderer, the documentary, can only show you X amount of things. It's 10 episodes, at least the first series of it. Then there's 10 more episodes. They can't show you everything. But so when you start really diving into the case, not by watching Candace Owens and convicting a murderer, because that's a bunch of bullshit. And I have videos to debunk every episode she did. Everything she says, I have a counter for. But if you truly look into this case, the stuff not in Making a Murderer still further proves Stephen's innocence. So if I was the Halbach family, I would be all out in the press talking about, oh my God, this didn't happen and Stephen is innocent. I could not be responsible for somebody being in prison who is innocent, and I would be fighting to free them. And there is a case that where that happened, that and I don't remember the name, and I believe we've even done live videos before on Justice with Jax to talk about that case, because there's a documentary on it. Chris something. But the murder victim's mom, who went after this guy pretty hardcore originally, and he got convicted for her daughter's murder. And then when she found further evidence to show that he's innocent, she was out there beating down every door. Um, so so I blame the Halbach family now, because the evidence is all out there to show that Stephen and Brendan are innocent. And but so does this sister think Stephen is innocent? Chris Watts, I think you're right, Debbie. I think that's the case. Next chapter, dumped again. That was the last time I talked to Stephen for 2 years. He once again just stopped talking to me. His buddy, Sandy, made a post on Facebook claiming Stephen wanted her to post that he no longer wanted anything to do with me and blah, blah, blah. I found out that Sandy, once again, lied to Stephen about me. She must feel really threatened by me to constantly sink so low as to tell him such tall tales so she can have him all to herself. Here's what she did this time. I am constantly warning people about the Averys, as well as Sandy, who have these PayPals and GoFundMes to try to get money out of Stephen's supporters for themselves. The Averys at least trot out Dolores or Alan and pretend the money will go to them. Sandy tried to get money because her basement flooded. Okay then. I've learned over the years the games the Averys play in claiming money was going to Dolores for something and how it really doesn't. At least not all of it. It's like 1 for her, 2 and 3 for them. They were claiming at this time that Dolores needed a new refrigerator or a washer. I can't remember which it was, as they have tried it all. I made a post warning people once again to not give money to any fund they were trying to lead people to. Dolores is not online. She doesn't have an email account. She doesn't have a PayPal. These are things the family sets up using her name so they can collect on her name. I always advise people that if you want to help Dolores, give the money to Stephen so he can get it to his mom, or give it to Kathleen Zellner and tell her where you want it to go. But the family cannot be trusted. Sandy told Stephen that I was telling people not to help his mom, which is an outright lie. But she knows that is the one thing that will really piss Stephen off. His mom is his world, and if you don't do right by her, then he will have nothing to do with you. It worked. I was so annoyed. When Stephen reached out to me after the first bunch of lies he was told about me, I told him to please come to me with any accusations so I could defend myself. I knew full well that he was going to continue talking and having visits with these people who really aren't completely supportive of him. I knew they were going to keep telling him lies about me. So just let me know. He said he would, but he didn't. He just took what she said and believed it. I would never in a million years talk smurf about Dolores. She is the only Avery, other than Stephen's cousin Kim Ducat, who has supported Stephen 100% both times, the whole time. I have visited Dolores twice and talked to her on the phone once. The last time I visited her in August of 2018, I gave her cash and a $50 Visa card. And there is the picture of that visit. This is very important right here. Of course, after that visit, Carla claimed I was lying and didn't give Dolores any money. My friend who was with me and took this photo is the one who pointed out that you can even see the card on the table. The notebook is where she wrote down my name and how much money I gave her. I guess she did that any time someone visited her and gave her something. But that's fine. Accuse me of lying about that too. It's so tiring and stupid. But so, yeah, I never even noticed until my friend pointed it out that, and you can't see it on here, but that's the gift card. When you look at it, you can see it is a Visa gift card. And then you can clearly see that that's a notebook right there. I can say that during that visit, I heard a lot of things about the family from Dolores. And let's just say she wasn't too fond of many of them either, or how they have treated Stephen. But I digress. Oh, I don't think I've ever really talked about the things that Dolores said to me that day. I'm just looking at the picture of Dolores and I. But Dolores told me things about her own children that she didn't like. Anyway, so Stephen dumps me again. Carla and her minions, as well as Sandy and her minions, have a field day again. But it still doesn't stop me from doing what I do. I continued running the biggest Stephen Avery support page on Facebook, bringing lots of attention to his case. I also worked on other cases. Here's something different, though. I have a life outside of the case. Imagine that. My world doesn't revolve around this case. I don't feel the need to be in every group on every platform. I have real friends, not just make-believe ones I talk to online. I covered the case when anything new popped up, but I also enjoyed my life off the interweb. Next chapter is my initial thoughts on the case. Let me get out of the drama for a little bit and go into what I think happened to Teresa Halbach and why. I am asked all the time, who do I think did it? But that has changed over the years as more information comes out. When I first watched Making a Murderer, it was hard not to think that there was something suspicious with Scott Blodorn, Ryan Hilgas, and Michael Halbach. The way Ryan was talking during their search party, and how Mike was off to his side and looking at him so oddly, I just couldn't shake it. Still can't. Mike saying something about grieving when they didn't even know if she was alive or dead, and that was another red flag. Teresa living with Scott and next door to her mom, yet no one knowing she was missing for days. Something just was not right here. There is a lot out there that points the finger at Ryan Hilgas. He was Teresa's ex-boyfriend, yet he was still involved in her life. Did he not know that she and his friend and her roommate Scott were having sex? Could that have set him off into a jealous rage? Then you find out that Teresa would take pictures of people naked and even photographed people having sex. She even joined one married couple for a threesome that later caused a divorce, and she dated the ex-husband for a while. Could that be something else that would trigger Ryan Hilgas? Teresa looks all sweet and innocent, but the more you look into her personal life, the more you learn that all isn't what it seems. Don't get me wrong, she was a single adult. What she does with consenting adults is her business. I am not slut shaming at all. I am also not blaming the victim. I have no problem at all with how she lived her life. But there was more to it that should have been looked into, and it just wasn't. It was also very odd to me that Ryan Hilgas moved right into Teresa Halbach's house when she was allegedly missing. He also accessed her email and voicemail. Her voicemail was full one day, and then it wasn't. So someone with access had deleted the messages. Ryan has admitted listening to Teresa's voicemail, and then he deleted them. Why? What were the voice messages? There was quite a while that I did think that Ryan Hilgas was responsible for Teresa's disappearance. Eventually, as I dove deeper, I decided he wasn't responsible, but he was involved somehow with Scott and Michael. More on that later. Next up was George Zipperer. Early calls with the police show that the Zipperers were not the second, but the last appointment of the day. When law enforcement is told to go question George, they all seemed intimidated and didn't want to do it. Seems George is a nasty drunk. At one point, George told law enforcement that he did not give Teresa permission to be on his property, so he wanted to file charges against her for trespassing. He also said if he caught her on his property, he would feed her to his dog. When I went to Manitowoc for the first time in 2016, I went to the Zipper house. I had to see what it looked like and how far it was from Avery Salvage. People were also saying something about his garage burning down shortly after the incident. Right across the street from him is a megachurch, so I was able to pull into their parking lot and snap a couple of pictures. The theory I was following at that time was that this was not a scheduled appointment, but a hustle shot. Teresa was paid $10 a picture by Auto Trader if it was a scheduled appointment. But if she found someone to list their vehicle and took that picture, she would get $20. That was called a hustle shot. It would make sense for her to then drive around, and if she saw a vehicle that had a for sale by owner sign on it, that she would approach them about putting an ad in the magazine. The Zipper vehicle was not George's, but his grandson Jason's, who was living with him. I thought it could have been either a hustle shot or something Jason set up and George didn't know about. I thought maybe Teresa showed up to take a picture for Jason. George didn't know she was going to be there, so he either shot her for trespassing or maybe his dog attacked her and then he finished her off. George also had access to a smelter. When you look into smelters in Manitowoc, they seem to be everywhere. There is that letter that was found in Green Bay, the one called the Sikkakee letter. It mentions a smelter, and I have a picture of that letter. You can't really see it. And the letter says, body was burnt up in aluminum smelter, 3 a.m. Friday morn, Sikkakee. And it was addressed to Manitowoc Sheriff and then says Avery. Read how sketchy George Zipperer seems. On Thursday, 7/3/05, at approximately 21:40 hours, Detective Remacher, Sergeant Colborne, and myself, Investigator Dietering, did attempt to make contact at the residence of George Zipperer, located at blah, blah, blah. We initially received no response to our repeated knocks at the door. Manitowoc County Dispatch was advised to place calls to the phone number for the Zipperers, and they indicated that they reached an answering machine. I also attempted to contact the Zipper residents via cell phone and obtain the same results. The door was ultimately answered by the following individual: George B. Zipper, date of birth 5/16/40. George was extremely belligerent initially, and it was my impression that he was apparently intoxicated. George indicated to me that the person from the auto trader had been at his residence and that he wanted her arrested. He indicated that she had no permission to be on his property and therefore she was trespassing. Not trespassing, but trespassing. George continued in a boisterous manner, even after I advised him that Teresa Halbach had been reported as a missing person, and that his telephone number was one of the last numbers she had placed outgoing telephone calls to from her cellular phone. I also spoke with George's son. That's how it was stated in here. George's son, Jason W. Zipper, 9/14/87, same address and phone. He indicated that he had advertised a 77 Pontiac Firebird for sale, but to his knowledge had not made any contact with the auto trader to have it advertised. Jason Zipper indicated that he attends Lincoln High School, Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and that he was there the entire day on Monday, 10/31. He further indicates that he attends LTC in Cleveland on Tuesdays. During this time, during this time, he did walk me out to the 77 Firebird that he had for sale. He indicated that this vehicle was located south of the Zipper residence and it was somewhat concealed by Calumet County Sheriff's Department complaint number blah 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 number of trees. Jason indicated the vehicle could be seen from the road, and when I looked backwards towards the road, I determined that this, in fact, was the case. I asked Jason and George whether either of them had made contact with the auto trader to schedule a photography shoot of the vehicle. Jason indicated he did not, and George further denied calling the Auto Trader magazine. I did address statements made apparently by George to Corporal Lemieux. See Lemieux's detailed report for information concerning this. George indicated that he had, in fact, told Corporal Lemieux that his son, Jason, was on his way to Alaska to find work. Zipper indicated that he does this to, quote, have a little fun, unquote, when people who he does not know calls his phone. At 21:53 hours, I was allowed into the Zipper residence. I did review voicemail messages left on the answering machine and caller IDs. I did locate a caller entry on 10/31/05 at 2:12 p.m. from phone number blah blah. I recognize this as being the cellular phone number of Teresa Halbach. I did review the voicemail messages and did locate a voicemail message from Teresa Halbach indicating that she was calling on Monday about 2:15 p.m. She stated she was in the neighborhood and that she was trying to photograph a 1977 Pontiac Firebird. She stated that she was having problems finding the residence and hoped to do so in the next few minutes. I had been allowed access to the residence by both Joellen Zipper and George Zipper. It should be noted that this voicemail message, or answering machine message, was subsequently copied by Detective Jacobs on Sunday, 1/6/05, or was that 11/6/05? In speaking with Joe Ellen NMI Zipper, date of birth 7/11/46, she stated she was in the backyard and apparently missed the telephone call that Ms. Halbach placed. She stated sometime in the afternoon, a young lady did come to the residence and advised that she was from the auto trader and was there to photograph a vehicle. She indicated she gave the young lady directions to where the car, described as a 1977 Firebird, had been located, and the girl had come back between 5 and 10 minutes later, indicating that she had gotten her pictures. Joellen Zipper advised the girl was happy and smiling. Ms. Zipper indicated that she did not see what vehicle, if any, the young lady had arrived in, nor could she tell me whether the young lady had arrived by herself or with someone else. Joellen indicates she could not determine which direction the young lady traveled on County Highway B when she left, as she had never actually seen the vehicle the young lady arrived in. Joellen and George did provide me with a copy of an Auto Trader magazine, which had been left by the photographer, along with some pricing information and a yellow sign, Calumet County Sheriff's Department, page 19, complaint file, blah, 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 indicating for sale as advertised in Auto Trader. I thanked the zippers for their information and left the residence. These items were subsequently placed into evidence. And then it's signed John Dietering, investigator, Calumet County Sheriff's Department. I'm sure you can see why someone would think there was something just not right with Teresa's visit that day. Then add to that the fact that Teresa left a voicemail both at the Zippers and Barbionda's, and one of those messages turned up missing. Could the one they claim was left at one place really be the one left at another to just try to place Teresa at the salvage yard last instead of the Zippers? Curiouser and curiouser. In trying to figure things out, I wrote up this timeline of events that happened prior to Making a Murderer being released. Here's what I put together. And I've posted this timeline before. I have it as a saved doc. 10/20/1980. Stephen is charged with 2 counts of burglary for breaking into a bar. He stole 2 packs of beer, 2 cheese sandwiches, and $14 in quarters. July 24, 1982. Stephen Avery marries Lori Matheson. November 23, 1982. Stephen pleads no contest for animal cruelty for dousing the family cat with gas and oil and throwing it into a bonfire. September 20, 1984. Stephen Avery's cousin, Sandra Morris, who is married to a Manitowoc County deputy, files a complaint against Stephen for indecent exposure and having sex with his wife outside during the day in his front yard. January 2nd, 1985. Stephen Avery runs Sandra Morris off the road and points an unloaded gun at her. He lets her go when she points out that she has a child in her car. January 3rd, 1985. The next day, Stephen Avery was questioned by Manitowoc County detectives about the incident, and Stephen said he did it because Sandra Morris was spreading rumors about him. January 4th, 1985. Stephen Avery is charged with endangering safety regardless of life and felon in possession of a firearm. July 29, 1985. Penny Bernston is attacked around 5:30 p.m. while jogging along Lake Michigan. She said her attacker was around 5'6", stocky, with brown eyes, long sandy hair, and wearing a black leather jacket. Sandra Morris's friend, Judy Dvorak, takes the report and immediately says, "It sounds like Stephen Avery." July 29, 1985, so still that same day, Stephen Avery is arrested for assaulting Penny Bernston. He was not allowed a phone call or given access to an attorney. August 1st, 1985. Penny Bernston tells Judy Dvorak that she can't see because her eyes are still swollen from the attack, but Judy has her sign the incident report that Judy prepared. August 1985. Manitowoc County Detective Thomas Bergner tells Manitowoc County Sheriff Kosarik about the lack of evidence on Gregory Allen the day of the attack, and 3 women from the DA's office tell District Attorney Vogel they thought Gregory Allen committed the crime. September 18, 1985. Stephen Avery is denied bail based on his past record. December 14, 1985. 16 witnesses testify that they saw Stephen from 1 p.m. to 11:45 p.m. on July 29, and a receipt is presented that is time-stamped of 5:13 p.m. March 10, 1986. Stephen Avery is found guilty of sexual assault, attempted murder, and false imprisonment. Judge Fred Hazelwood sentences him to 32 years in prison. August 5th, 1987, Wisconsin Court of Appeals denies Stephen Avery his request to overturn his conviction. 1988, Stephen Avery gets divorced and loses custody of his kids. His now ex-wife later marries his former brother-in-law, Pete Dassey, Brendan Dassey's father. 1994, the Wisconsin Supreme Court denies to hear Stephen's appeal. Attorneys Stephen Glynn and Robert Hennick agreed to re-examine Stephen Avery's case. July 9, 1995, a woman in Manitowoc County is sexually assaulted in her home by Gregory Allen. 1995, Manitowoc County Sergeant Andrew Colborn receives a call from a detective in Brown County stating that an inmate admitted to the crime in 1985 that another man was serving time for. Colborn would not write this up until September 12, 2003. April 26, 1996. Gregory Allen is convicted of sexual assault for the July 9, 1995 attack and sentenced to 60 years in prison. September 23, 1996. Stephen Avery's attorneys have DNA experts re-examine the sex crime kit collected from Penny Bernston. The results show that a third unknown DNA profile that was neither Bernston or Avery was present. Judge Hazelwood rejects the DNA evidence and does not allow a retrial. September 3, 1997. The Wisconsin Court of Appeals rules against Stephen Avery. October 3, 1997. The Wisconsin Supreme Court rules against Stephen Avery. 2001. The Wisconsin Innocent Project agrees to take Stephen Avery's case. April 3, 2002. Judge Hazelwood grants the Wisconsin Innocence Project permission to conduct DNA testing. The evidence from his 1985 case is sent to the state crime lab. Manitowoc County Lieutenant James Lenk signs to transfer the evidence. September 10, 2003. A single pubic hair unequivocally excludes Stephen Avery and actually matches Gregory Allen. September 11, 2003. Stephen Avery is released from prison. September 12, 2003. Colborn writes and submits a statement about the phone call he got in 1995. Happened in 1995. He writes a report in 2003. September 18, 2003. Manitowoc District Attorney Peggy Lautenschlager asks the Wisconsin Attorney General to investigate Manitowoc's handling of the Stephen Avery case. December 2003. State Representative Mark Gundrum develops the Stephen Avery Task Force to review police and prosecutorial practices statewide. The Wisconsin State Legislature begins drafting the Avery Bill and recommends Stephen Avery receive $450,000 in wrongful conviction compensation. December 15, 2003. Manitowoc County Court clears the DA's office of any wrongdoing in Stephen Avery's case. October 12, 2004. Stephen Avery files a civil lawsuit against Manitowoc County, Manitowoc County District Attorney Dennis Vogel, and Sheriff Tom Kosurik for $36 million. November 24, 2004. Stephen Avery's girlfriend Jody is arrested for DUI. She will be in jail for 7 months. 2005. Depositions begin in May. October 11, 2005. Lieutenant James Lenk is deposed, and he acknowledges the call Colborn received in 1995. Sandra Morris is also deposed this day. October 13, 2005. Sheriff Kenneth Peterson is deposed and denies any knowledge of anything that would have cleared Stephen Avery. Also, on October 13, 2005, Sergeant Andrew Colborne is deposed and claims that he doesn't recall speaking to anyone about Stephen Avery's case. Judy Dvorak is also deposed and admits she suggested Stephen looked like the person Penny Bernstein was describing. So, when did Colborne wrote his report on September 12th, 2003, but then when deposed on October 13th, 2005, 2 years later, he says he doesn't remember talking to anybody, yet he wrote a report on it. I don't know what's up with Jody anymore, Debbie. Probably still a drunk. October 26, 2005. Chief Deputy of Manitowoc County Eugene Couchet is deposed about his sketch looking almost exactly like Stephen Avery's mugshot from 1985. He denies having access to the mugshot. He framed his sketch and has been proudly displaying it for almost 20 years. He also questions if Stephen Avery is really innocent and the validity of the DNA that freed him. October 31, 2005. Stephen Avery calls Auto Trader at 8:12 a.m. to request that Teresa Halbach come photograph a minivan he was selling. He leaves the name B. Yanda, which was for his sister, Barbara Yanda, as it was her car. Teresa Halbach calls Barb Yanda at 11:43 a.m., saying she will be there sometime after 2 p.m. Teresa Halbach takes pictures of a car for sale at the Schmitz residence at 1:30 p.m. Teresa is at the Zipper residence sometime between 2 and 2:30 p.m. Dawn Pliska from Auto Trader talks to Teresa at 2:27 p.m., and Teresa tells her that she is on her way to the Avery brothers. Scott Taddock says he arrived home at 3:15 p.m. and then went hunting. He passed Bobby Dassey on the road, who is also going hunting. Brendan and Blaine Dassey got off the school bus at 3:45 p.m. on October 31, 2005. The bus driver testifies that she saw a woman taking pictures of a vehicle, which I've proven there's no way. Barb Yanda comes home and makes dinner for them at 5 p.m. Blaine Dassey leaves at 5:20 or 5:30 p.m. with his friend Jason to go trick-or-treating. Barb leaves around 5:30 to go with Scott to Green Bay to visit his mom in the hospital. Blaine's boss calls at 5:45 p.m. Brendan used to work for him too. Stephen calls Brendan shortly after that and asks him to come watch a bonfire. 15 minutes later, Stephen calls again and asks what is taking so long. Brendan was changing his pants and putting on a sweatshirt because it was chilly. Brendan gets there around 7 p.m.-ish. They drive around in Dolores Avery's golf cart, picking up debris. When they're done, Stephen asks if he wants to help clean the mess in the garage. Scott Taddock says he saw fire at 7:30 to 7:45 p.m. on October 31, 2005. After about a half hour, Stephen and Brendan go out to the fire, and Stephen gets a call on his cell phone from Barb. She wanted to know if Brendan was there. She reminds Stephen to tell Brendan he needs to be home before 10 p.m. and to make sure he has a sweatshirt on. They watch the fire, and then at 9:30 to 9:45 p.m., Brendan Dassey goes home. Stephen Avery received 2 calls from his girlfriend Jody on October 31, 2005. One was at 5:36 p.m., and the other was at 8:57 p.m. I've done a live on this before. I need to do a live just to talk about this timeline. And like, I want to make a graph and everything, because when you look at all these times, when you really like put it out there, there's no way Stephen and Brendan could have done this in this time frame with all this other evidence of these calls and people coming and going, and it's so frustrating. Um, and so that's why I had written this timeline initially too, because it frustrates me so much that this timeline proves innocence. November 3rd, 2005. Teresa's boss, Tom Pierce, called Teresa Halbach's mother, Karen Halbach, around 1 p.m. and told her that Teresa didn't show up for work Tuesday or Wednesday. He was worried because her voicemail was full, and that was unusual for Teresa because that was her business phone also. Karen called Mike and Tim Halbach to ask if they had heard from Teresa. She also called Auto Trader to ask them when the last time they heard from Teresa was, and she didn't get an answer, so then she called Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Mike Halbach got in Teresa's cell phone records and knew her last call was Monday, 10:31, or at least that's what he's claiming. They used her cell phone records to retrace Teresa's steps. They put out posters on November 3rd, 2005 and November 4th. Ryan Hilgas, Teresa's ex-boyfriend, planned to get a group together at Teresa's house on November 5th, 2005 to do an organized search in Manitowoc where Teresa was last seen. Teresa was reported missing at 5 p.m. on November 3rd, 2005. On November 5th, 2005, the RAV4 was found at 10:30 a.m. by Pam Sturm, Karen Halbach's husband's first cousin. It was about 350 feet from a car crusher at the Avery salvage yard that was 40 acres and had around 40,000 vehicles. How could it be 40,000 vehicles? That seems like that that has to be a typo. Really? 40,000 vehicles? No. 4,000 vehicles. I don't know. I'm bad with numbers. Investigators became actively involved in the search at 2 p.m. on November 5th, 2005. Detective Jacobs asks if Stephen Avery is in custody. Why are you asking if Stephen Avery is in custody when you have nothing? November 6, 2005. Brendan denied any knowledge of Teresa Halbach's death. The firearms and garage are searched on November 6, 2005. Pam of God. November 7, 2005. Volunteers helped search the 40 acres of 40,000, there it is again, that number, 40,000 cars. Ryan Hilgas and Scott Blodorn, Teresa Halbach's roommate, sign in at the Avery salvage yard at 9:03 a.m. and out at 4:28 p.m. I think when I do a live that we go over this too, I have all the sign-in log sheets, and those are very interesting as well. Male blood is found in 6 locations in the RAV4, and in the RAV4, and female blood is found in the truck, in the back. They discover what they say are Teresa Halbach's electronics and burn barrels at Stephen Avery's and Barb Yanda's. November 8th, 2005. Colborne removes all contents of Stephen Avery's nightstand. No evidence is discovered. Ryan Hilgas and Scott Blodorn again sign in at Avery Salvage. They sign in at 6:41 p.m. and out at 7:06 p.m. November 8, 2005, Stephen Avery's trailer is searched again, and this time Link finds a key to Teresa Halbach's RAV4. The RAV4 plates are found by volunteer fireman William Brandis near the path on the way to the trailers the Avery family live in. Human bone fragments were found in the burn area, but claimed they couldn't examine or recover the area because of a German Shepherd chained up nearby. The next day, on November 9, 2005, they declare the bones as human and female. Stephen Avery is arrested on a weapons charge for the .22 caliber Marlin Glenfield semi-automatic rifle that belonged to Stephen's landlord, Raleigh Johnson, which hung over the bed. They find a cut on his hand and take a swab of his saliva. November 10, they recover more bones. They find DNA on the key. November 11th, the blood found in the cargo area of the RAV4 match a soda can Teresa Halbach had in the front of her car. 12/6/2005, Teresa Halbach's death certificate is issued. It states that she was pronounced dead on November 10, but then it also says that the actual or estimated date of death is unknown. See all this stuff that they're doing without any evidence or proof of these things? Stephen Avery's preliminary trial begins. Judge Patrick Willis decides enough evidence exists to hold Stephen over for trial. 12/20/2005. Stephen Avery accepts a settlement from Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department for $400,000. January 16, 2006. Stephen Avery pleads innocent. January 19, 2006. FBI say cremains in a burn pit belong to Teresa Halbach. February 7, 2006. Ken Kratz emails Sherry Culhane, big hair, asking her if she really was the person who tested Stephen Avery's blood sample back in 1985. That email is not, this is just a timeline. We'll talk about that email. February 20, 2006. Wiegert re-interviews Stephen Avery's family, and Kayla Avery, Stephen's niece, says Brendan Dassey, her cousin, has been acting up lately. I want to read what this person just said. Wasn't also a thing that the key wasn't there at first and then it appeared later during a second search? Correct, Wendy. You had that Colborne took everything out of that bookshelf, whatever you want to call it, and then later Lank finds it, the magic key. February 27th, 2006. What is in my hair? Wiegert and Fassbender go to Brendan Dassey's school and take him out of class. That's February 27th. Brendan is then re-interviewed after 10 p.m. in a resort hotel in Michigan. Wiegert and Fassbender take Brendan to his trailer to get his jeans that had bleach stains on them. They also took Barb Yanda's handcuffs and leg irons. March 1st, 2006, Brendan Dassey is interviewed again, and they got a search warrant for the garage. Brendan is arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide, rape, first-degree sexual assault, pregnancy, weird, bodily harm, and mutilating a corpse. Also on that day, on March 1st, is when they find 2 bullets in the garage, and Sherry Culhane claims Teresa Halbach's DNA is on one of them. On March 2nd, 2006, Ken Kratz holds a press conference where he taints the jury pool by telling some wild story with no actual proof about Brendan's alleged confession. February 3rd, 2006, Brendan Dassey is charged and bail is set at $250,000. Len Kaczynski is appointed to defend him. On February 6th, they find 11 separate .22 caliber shell casings in the garage. Also on March 6th, Stephen Avery's girlfriend Jody is released from jail. On February 7th, Wiegert re-interviews Kayla Avery and gets a statement of Brendan Dassey's involvement in Teresa Halbach's murder. On March 8th, Kratz adds kidnapping, false imprisonment, and sexual assault with a dangerous weapon to Stephen Avery's charges from Brendan's statement. On March 17th, Stephen Avery's pretrial begins and Judge Willis ups his bond from $500,000 to $750,000. On April 3rd, 2006, they take a cotton swab and swab the hood latch, and Sherry Culhane gets a full profile that Kratz claims is Stephen Avery's sweat. There's no such thing as sweat DNA. On April 27, 2006, Len Kaczynski emails his investigator, Michael O'Kelly, and tells his plans to use Brendan Dassey to help convict Stephen Avery. On May 9th, 2006, O'Kelly emails Kaczynski outlining how he will coerce a confession from Brendan Dassey. On May 12th, 2006, Judge Fox said Brendan Dassey's statements were voluntary and admissible. Also on that day, O'Kelly manipulates Brendan Dassey and has him write out a confession and draw the rape and murder. Also in May, Jody is caught drinking and spends 5 nights in jail. She is issued a no-contact order from Stephen Avery. Bye, Debbie. Yeah, we've been doing this almost an hour and a half. When I'm done with this chapter, that will end today. Have a great weekend. Judge Willis forbids Manitowoc County Sheriff Department from any involvement in Stephen Avery's trial. Any involvement. The trial is moved to Calumet County. Judge Willis rules that the defense cannot suggest to the jury any suspect by name except Brendan Dassey. Judge Fox denies Brendan Dassey a new attorney. In June, Andy Colborn files his report about his interaction with Stephen Avery from November 3rd, 2005, 8 months earlier. He's really bad at filing reports, isn't he? June 30th, 2006, Brendan Dassey writes a letter to Judge Fox recanting his confession. Judge Fox dismisses Kaczynski after finding out that he allowed Brendan to be interrogated without counsel. On August 31, 2006, Jody ends her relationship with Stephen Avery. On January 29, 2007, Judge Willis dismisses 2 of 3 charges against Stephen Avery, kidnapping and sexual assault, because the state won't indicate if Brendan Dassey will testify in Stephen's case. January 30, 2007. Judge Willis denies state motion to exclude blood vial. The state asks the judge to allow the FBI to develop a chemical test to prove the blood was not planted, and the judge allows it. A test like this has not been done in over 10 years. On February 12, 2007, Stephen Avery's trial begins in Chilton, Wisconsin. On March 16, 2007, Richard Mahler is dismissed from the jury. On March 18, Stephen Avery is found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and possession of a firearm. Not guilty on mutilation of a corpse. April 16, 2007, Brendan Dassey's trial begins. April 25, Brendan Dassey is found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and second-degree sexual assault. They're found guilty of different things for the same crime. June 1, 2007. Stephen Avery is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of early release. On August 2nd, 2007, Brendan Dassey is sentenced to life with the possibility of early release in 2048. On January 15, 2010, Stephen Drizin, co-founder of the Center on Wrongful Convictions of Youth, is defending Brendan Dassey and claims Len Kaczynski did not have Brendan's best interests in mind, so he should be granted a new trial. January 21, 2010, Drizin shows that Michael O'Kelly was only interested in convicting Stephen Avery, regardless of what that would do to Brendan Dassey. He said since Kaczynski was dismissed for allowing Brendan to be interrogated without an attorney present, then the phone calls that resulted from that should be inadmissible. In September of 2010, the press finds out about Ken Kratz's sex to clients and the girlfriends of clients. October of 2010, Kratz resigns. December 12, 2010, Judge Fox denied Brendan Dassey's motion for a new trial. August 24, 2011, Wisconsin Court of Appeals upholds Judge Willis's denying Stephen Avery a new trial. In December Wisconsin Supreme Court refused to review Stephen Avery's case. June 5th, 2012, Stephen Avery requests his files to represent himself. January 30th, 2013, Wisconsin Court of Appeals upholds Judge Fox's decision denying Brendan Dassey a new trial. August 1st, 2013, Wisconsin Supreme Court refuses to review Brendan Dassey's case. December 18, 2015, Netflix releases Making a Murderer. Now let's move on to the Manitowoc Sheriff Department. A lot of people think they are involved in Teresa Halbach's disappearance. Some even think they even killed her or she has been put in witness protection. All because Manitowoc County Sheriff Department wanted to get out from under the $36 million lawsuit. While I think many of those officers are shady AF, I don't think either of those things happened. I don't know why, but I just really don't think they would kill some random girl to get out of that lawsuit. Teresa wasn't a person in trouble regularly, or like a drug addict or any of these things that would put her with MCSD's radar. While I do think they absolutely have lied and planted some evidence, I just don't think they would murder some innocent girl. Now, if evidence came out showing that it was actually the case, then I would be blown away, but not totally shocked. I know there are many people who think Teresa Halbach isn't dead. I can understand the thinking since the alleged bones recovered in this case have never been proven to be hers. Yeah, Andrea. I am not wearing a tinfoil hat on the grassy knoll. I follow facts. Science has shown that the bones were consistent with a female in Karen Halbach's family. No evidence proved that it was undeniably Teresa. I do not believe she is still alive, but if it did turn out that she is, as I said in the previous paragraph, I would be blown away, but not shocked. The only thing I can say with absolute certainty is that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey are innocent. Everything and everyone else is suspect. I firmly believe that Jim Link and Andy Colborn have lied and have framed Stephen Avery to get out of the lawsuit for when they framed him in 1985. I do not know the full extent of their treachery, but these two just happened to be there when everything they allegedly have on Stephen was found. Let's start with Andrew Colborn's call into dispatch, where he says Teresa Halbach's license plate. Here is his testimony. For counsel's benefit, this will be track 3. All I'm told by the Sheriff's Department is that these are calls between November 3 and 5, November 12, 2005. Attorney Kratz, Judge, we don't know when. What he is about to play them is within a 8-day period. Attorney Strang, if the witness made the call, I'm going to ask him when he made the call. The court, all right, go ahead. And so now this is the call. Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, this is Lynn. Lynn, hi Andy. Can you run Sam William Henry 582? See if it comes back to, and then inaudible. Sam William Henry 582. Attorney Strang, let me stop it right there. In fact, I'm going to go back because it was so soft at the beginning. And now he plays it again. Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, this is Lynn. Lynn, hi Andy. Can you run? And then it stopped. Question by Attorney Strang, is that you? Answer, it sounds like me. I believe it's me. Question, okay, I'll, and so he plays it. Sam William Henry 582. See if it comes back to, and it's inaudible. And then the call again. Lynn, hi Andy. Can you run Sam William 582? See if it comes back to inaudible. Sam William Henry 582. Inaudible. Alrighty. You speak any Spanish there, Andy? I just a call at the top of the list is my on call didn't call me back. If I want to get in trouble, Andy, I get in trouble. What am I supposed to do? Well, and then my favorite one is in the city of Manitowoc. Okay, shows that she's a missing person and it lists to Teresa Hallbach. All set. Okay, is that what you're looking for, Andy? 99 Toyota. Yep. Okay, thank you. You're so welcome. Bye bye. Question. Okay, that's the entire call. Hangs up. That's your voice? Answer. Yes, I believe that's my voice. Yes. Question. When did you make that phone call inquiring about a license plate? Answer. I don't know. Question. Do you have any recollection of making that phone call? Answer. It would have had to have been on 11/3/05, or I'm guessing 11/3/05. Question. Okay, but let's establish this first. Do you remember making the call? Answer. Not really, no. Question. What you're asking the dispatcher, whose name is Lynn, is to run a plate that's Sam William Henry 582. Did I hear that correctly? Answer. Yes, sir. Question. Sam William Henry is a phonetic code that law enforcement officers use because sometimes it's hard to tell just a letter over a radio? Answer. Yes, sir. Question. Sam William Henry. That would be SWH 582. Answer. Yes. Question. This license plate? Answer. Yes, sir. Question. I'm showing for the benefit of the record. This is either Exhibit 152 or 153. The clerk. It's on the plate itself. Attorney Strang. This one happens to be 153. Question by Attorney Strang. And the dispatcher tells you that the plate comes back to a missing person or woman? Answer. Yes, sir. Question. Teresa Hallbach. Mispronounces the last name, but you recognize the name. Answer. Yes, sir. Question. Then you tell the dispatcher, oh, 99 Toyota? Answer. No, I thought she told me that. And so Strang plays the call again. Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, this is Lynn. And Colburn says Lynn, and she says, hi, Andy. And then Hallbach says, Colburn says, can you run Sam William Henry 582? See if it comes back to inaudible. Sam William Henry 582. Inaudible. Alrighty. Do you speak any Spanish there, Andy? I just got a call that the top of my list is my on-call didn't call me back. If I want to get in trouble, Andy, I get in trouble. What am I supposed to do? Well, my favorite one is in the city of Manitowoc. Okay, shows that she's a missing person and it lists to Teresa Hallbach. And then Colburn says, all set. And Lynn says, okay, that's what you're looking for, Andy? And Colburn says, 99 Toyota? And Lynn says, yup. And then, okay, thank you. You are so welcome. Bye-bye. Question. Actually, you who suggests this is a 99 Toyota? Answer. I asked if it was a 99 Toyota. Yes. Question. And the dispatcher confirmed that? Answer. Yes. Question. Were you looking at these plates when you called them in? Answer. No, sir. Question. And your best guess is that you called them in on November 3, 2005? Answer. Yes. Probably after I received a phone call from Investigator Weger letting me know there was a missing person. Question. Investigator Weger, did he give you the license plate number for Teresa Hallbach when he called you? Answer. I don't remember the entire content of our conversation, but obviously he must have because I was asking the dispatcher to run the plate for me. Question. Did you not trust that Investigator Weger got the number right? Answer. I don't. That's just the way I would have done it. It's not a trust or distrust issue. Attorney Strang. I'm about to move to a different area, Your Honor. The court. All right, we'll take our afternoon break at this time. Members of the jury do not discuss the case during the break, and will resume in about 15 minutes. And then when the jury is not present, the court. Counsel, you should report back a little before 3. Attorney Strang. Thank you. And then the recess was taken. Now the court. Mr. Strang, you may resume your cross-examination. Cross-examination continued by Attorney Strang. Question. So as you sit here today, and my voice is starting to go, Sergeant Colborne, you don't recall whether Investigator Wiegert gave you Ms. Halbach's telephone number when he called you that Thursday evening? Answer. He never gave me anything about a telephone number. Question. But you think he must have given you her license plate number. Did I say telephone number? Answer. Yes, you did. Question. I'm sorry, I apologize. What I meant is, you don't recall, as you sit here today, whether Mr. Wiegert gave you Teresa Halbach's license plate number when he called you on November 3? Answer. No, I just don't remember the exact content of our conversation then. Question. But... Answer. He had to have given it to me because I wouldn't have had the number any other way. Question. Well, and you can understand how someone listening to that might think you were calling in a license plate that you were looking at on the back end of a 99 Toyota from listening to that tape. You can understand why someone might think that, can't you? Attorney Kratz. It's a conclusion, Judge. He's conveying the problems to the jury. The court. I agree. The objection is sustained. Question. This call sounded like hundreds of other license plate or registration checks you have done through dispatch before? Answer. Yes. Question. But there's no way you should have been looking at Teresa Halbach's license plate on November 3 on the back end of a 99 Toyota? Attorney Kratz. Asked and answered, Your Honor. He already said he didn't and was not looking at the license plate. The court. Sustained. Question by Attorney Strang. There's no way you should have been there. There's no way you should have been, is there? Answer. I shouldn't have been, and I was not looking at a license plate. Question. Because you were aware now that the first time that Toyota was reported found was 2 days later on November 5. Answer. Yes, sir. Question. You were aware that it was found without its license plates? Answer. Yes, sir. Question. You are aware that the license plates weren't found until November 8, 2005? Answer. Yes, sir. And now, out of the record. This is me talking now, not from their transcript. To me, that whole recording, and then watching Andy Colborne testifying, seemed hella fishy. It looked to me like Colborne was so close to cracking on the stand, and if Dean Strang had just pushed a little more, he would have got him. Why is Colborne, on his day off, calling on his personal phone and saying the plate number if he is not looking at it? Why would he be calling it in? He was not on duty. He was not out looking for the car. He was not working. It absolutely seems to me that he had to be looking at Teresa Halbach's car and called it in. How much longer? Okay, it's not much longer. We know now that there is a witness who went into the Cenex gas station on November 4th, and when he walked in there was a missing poster on the window that looked like this, and there's a picture of it in the book. That man looked at that car and knew he had seen it down County Highway 147 by the dam. When he went into the station, he saw someone in a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department uniform, so told him he saw that car. Here is his affidavit. And now this is the transcript. Now comes your affiant, Kevin Romlow, and under oath hereby states as follows. And Kevin Romlow has commented on live videos I've done before. Kevin, I would love to talk to you. I would drive up to Manitowoc and we could do a live video together, or we can do one by Zoom, but I would love to talk to you, Kevin. If Kathleen Zellner approves, because I also would never do something that could hurt the case. I am of legal majority and can truthfully and competently testify, blah, 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 sound by, no alcohol, no drugs, blah, blah. I'm not going to read all that. In 2005, I lived near Mishkot, Wisconsin. I am familiar with the Taddock family because I am acquaintances with Sean Taddock. Sean's brother Scott is now married to Stephen Avery's sister Barb. Sean Taddock has said things over the years too. can't remember if he's okay. I'm going to get distracted, but there's stuff with Sean Taddock. On November 3 and 4, 2005, I was in Michigan. I saw Teresa Halbach's vehicle by the East Twin River Dam in Michigan at the turnabout the bridge as I drove west on Highway 147. Around midday on November 4, 2005, I stopped at the Cenex gas station at the intersection of Highway 147 and State Street in Michigan. While there, I saw and read a missing person poster for Teresa Halbach. I remember that the poster had a picture of Teresa Halbach and written descriptions of Teresa Halbach and the car she was driving. I recognized the poster is attached as Exhibit A to this affidavit as a copy of the one I saw at the Cenex station on November 4, 2005. I recognized that the written description of the vehicle on the poster, here comes the yawn, on the poster matched the car I saw at the turnaround by the dam. While I was in the Cenex station at a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department officer came into the station. I immediately told the officer that I had seen a car that matched the description of the car on Teresa Halbach's missing person poster at the turnaround by the dam. You can watch my videos of when I drove this area and timed it and see, timing-wise, how close that Cenex station is to that dam. It's literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes. In December 2016, I watched Making a Murderer. In the series, I recognized the officer who I talked to at the Cenex station on November 4, 2005. A photograph of this officer is attached as Exhibit B to this affidavit. Having watched Making a Murderer, I now know that his name is Andrew Colborn. After I watched Making a Murderer, I sent a text message to Scott Taddock. Kevin Romlow texted Scott directly. Having reviewed a saved copy of that message, I know that I sent it on December 12, 2016 at 6:13 p.m. So that is a year after Making a Murderer came out. Because Making a Murderer came out December 18 of 2015. So on December 20th, 2016 is when he's reaching out to Scott. When Scott is now all on the poor us, look what's been done to us, and acting like he cares about Brendan. I know that I sent it on December 12, 2016 at 6:13 p.m. In the message, I told Scott Taddock that I had seen Teresa Halbach's car in Michigan on November 4, 2005, and had told the officer in the Cenex station. On December 19, 2016, I sent Scott Taddock another message. I never heard back from Scott Taddock. Copies of the text message conversation I had with Scott Taddock are attached as Exhibit C to this affidavit. Nothing has been promised or given to me in exchange for this affidavit. So out of the record, here's what I said. Not suspicious at all, is it? So, Scott, who talks a lot of shit about Stephen. He's threatened to kill Stephen before. Multiple times he has threatened to kill Stephen. So Scott doesn't care about Stephen, but he allegedly cares about Brendan. I know differently on that though too, from things that Scott has said. But if Scott cares about Brendan, and a guy texts him to tell him, I am a witness, and not only did I see this car, but I told Colborn that I saw this car. Why did Scott never tell anybody he received that text? I'm not reading the next chapter. We'll do that on the next live. But the next chapter is titled So Many Rabbit Holes. I do not know when I will do the next live. I am fully booked next weekend, so I would not be doing it next week. But I will look at my schedule and see when I can do the next reading. Um, and then we will get an event scheduled. I'm trying to do all these readings, though, would be a Saturday at this time. But I just can't do next week. And we'll see how long it takes for the letter that Stephen texted me about that he sent me. So whenever I get that letter, those can take months. Mail can be really horrible. Or it could be mail could have been delivered here already and now it's going to happen to be in my mailbox. Um, but whenever I get that letter, since Steven said I could talk about it, I will go live and read you that letter. And that would probably be same day type thing. So you'd only get a few hours notice of when I'll go live. And depending on what the letter says, um, if I have to go through Kathleen first, because there are times when Stephen has asked me to do something and I don't know if it would be good for his case, so I go through I ask Kathleen first. And sometimes Kathleen says yes, and there's been times she has said no. So, yeah, that is that. So I am going to go now. I am starving. I haven't eaten yet today. And I also am going to, it's only 50 degrees and windy and cold here, but I'm going to a farm to go look at some spring flowers. So I'm going to go and enjoy the weekend. Thank you, everybody who have joined us live. Thank you, everybody who will be watching this later, either here or on the Justice with Jax YouTube channel. You can purchase my book that we are reading from, Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Stephen Avery by Jax West on Amazon. If you are a witness or know anything on this case, please reach out to Kathleen Zellner, either go to her website where she has a phone number and an email listed. Christopher, we should just be posting instead of and I think it's in a pinned comment on Stephen Avery Project, the phone number or the email. That's where you can, that you don't have to go to KathleenTZellner.com and then click on the Stephen Avery page for that. But please reach out to Kathleen, or if you have reached out to Kathleen and you don't hear back from her, you can message this page or email us at officialstephenaveryproject@gmail.com or justicewithjax@gmail.com, because sometimes your messages get lost and my email contact with her, they don't always care what I have to tell them, but maybe I would have a better chance of getting you in contact with Kathleen if you can't yourself. So, all right, I'm going to go. Thank you, everybody. And my mouse isn't working. I have to keep turning my mouse off and on to get it to work. But as always, investigation continues.